Welcome one, welcome all one more time here on your favorite show. This is Sankofa, your host is Maponga J, broadcasting live from Johannesburg, South Africa, here in Midrand. It has been a long holiday, and Corona has taken its toll on us, and challenges on every side. People are falling like autumn leaves, and death tolls are quite on increase around the greater African continent and in places far and wide. And we would like to welcome you again to 2021 here. This is our debut show, first show to open up the year. And today is going to be a free, open microphone, open screen sort of space where you as our audience who have been with us, there are a couple of subjects that we have covered in the previous year, the couple of guests that we have brought onto the show, different perspectives. An uncut show, true, honest, real people discussing real stories. And if you remember very well, we went in from royalties to indigenous medicines, a bit of politics, a bit of fashion, a bit of art, and education, and genocides, and a couple of programs, women issues, and stuff like that. And we would like you to hear from you as we are beginning the year, which show could have been the best for you, which one could have been the most exciting for you. And while we are on it, we also want to give you some opportunity as our wonderful audience to say, look back at the year, pick up what you like the most, and advise us as to what kind of shows do you want to see us moving into, and what type of content do you want us to be generating for you. And your driver is Maponga J on this program, Sankofa. So you're free to be calling in today. The numbers are flashing on the screen there. If you are 011, I think it's 1010 4557. One more time. Then the code for South Africa is +27, then 010, then 900, then 4557. That's the number that we are free to be calling us on, to be giving us your contribution, to be sharing with us your stories, whatever you are willing to be talking about there, how you're surviving Corona, and how has your holiday been like. And here in South Africa, it has been quite a bit of hell. It has been hell here. We are locked indoors. We can't move. We can't do anything. And we are just waiting, as it were, for solutions to be found. And as we had said initially in the course of the year, maybe while we are waiting for you to be looking for your airtime and calling us, I want to give you some few synopses as to the news that is happening around the world. We might as well just start off with the corona pandemic, or pandemic, as other people are telling us. It's not a pandemic, it's a pandemic. I don't know the difference, maybe just the spelling. But having said that, this thing it's here, and it is costing lives. Whatever nature, whatever type this virus and bacteria or disease is like, we may not have the full understanding as to the scientific know-how as common people, but we have received quite a number of news as of last week on its own. I think I laid to rest more than 4 friends, and by weekend, as of yesterday, I have 2 other funerals that are on standby. And it is beginning to eat up into our happy space as we are seeing this happening. But there's one question that I asked, and which I would also want to ask you. And if you have an answer out there, please prepare the answer for us and give us a call. If there are doctors out there, pharmacists and pharmacologists, medical doctors who have solutions and answers to these questions, please help me. If corona is a natural disease, then is it not possible that we can find a natural solution to it? But if it is a scientific problem, or it's a scientific disease, will we be safe to use scientific solutions to that? I know it might sound very, very trivial for me to ask such a question, but my question is simple, is simply based on our historical past as the world over. Question number 2, how have we dealt with pandemics in the past? How has this world dealt with measles, dealt with syphilis, dealt with Ebola, dealt with HIV in the past? And in the same wavelength, we want to find out, is there anything we can learn from the past that we can implement in the present? Because if corona or COVID-19 is a natural disease, as of influenza, as of measles, as of chickenpox, as of any other, as of flu, or if it is sexually transmitted disease and all these things. We know that all natural problems have their solutions in the natural realm. But if COVID-19 is a scientific disease, then we will need a scientific solution to that. By no means am I undermining the fact that the pandemic is here, but in the long term, are we dealing here with a natural problem or we are dealing with a scientific problem? That's the question I have right now, because knowing the source and the nature of that disease will actually assist us to be dealing with solutions around that disease. That's my first comment. A second comment that I have, it is a rather sad observation to note that in Africa, things like malaria, for example, things like hunger, for example, basic hunger, things like HIV and Ebola, and all these problems that we continuously been having. If I can zoom in into HIV, for example, that has been here for the past 30 years plus almost. And to date, we still don't have a vaccine for HIV. We don't have like proper medication. We have lifetime medication for HIV. And it is still a problem that is almost affecting, in some countries, 20-30% of the population is infected with this virus called AIDS or HIV. And if it is true that corona is a problem, is the problem of corona much bigger than the problem of HIV? How many people are dying so far from HIV vis-a-vis people that are dying from the COVID-19? That's a question. Secondly, how many people are dying of hunger and starvation vis-a-vis those that are dying of COVID-19? Question number 3, how many people are dying of diabetes? How many people are dying of TB? How many people are dying of malaria vis-a-vis those that are dying of COVID-19? It makes it very complicated from where we are sitting as common people, because it looks like the real problems that Africa is facing, the real challenges that Africa is facing in terms of diseases. These diseases and problems never reach the world influencers, the world pharmaceuticals, with the same agency that COVID-19 has reached the world. We know that the whole world over, particularly the first world countries, and I'm using the word first world very selectively, the first world countries have expedited the processes of vaccines, the processes of diagnosis, the processes of prescriptions and etc. with such agency and such speed. And we have not seen such speed when it comes to other pandemics and epidemics such as HIV and etc. This makes the African person very suspicious as to the agency of the disease vis-a-vis our continuous problems and perils that we've been suffering on the African continent. I don't want to blame the first world on this one. I want to point the guns at our African leadership and our African governance systems, who have sat for the longest of time, if not 25 to 30 years, massaging a problem, constantly looking for a solution from outside. And truly speaking, this solution has not come to us yet. Why? Maybe because HIV is not a priority to America, it's not a priority to Britain and to Spain, it's not a priority for China. But COVID-19 has become a priority for the world. And for that reason, the amount of speed we have seen moving into vaccines and even into medication for COVID-19 has been very, very expedient. We want to challenge our African governments. We also want to challenge the United Nations. We want to challenge the Western world that in as much as we have a pandemic that is on the table, but remember that in the midst of us putting speed on COVID-19, we needed also to pick up some speed on other pandemics that are actually costing African lives. Bearing in mind that these other diseases that we already have on the ground, when COVID-19 comes into space and finds these diseases as underlying factors or underlying problems, many of these people who are already infected with, for example, TB, for example, high blood pressure, for example, diabetes and HIV, by the time they get infected with this COVID-19, that their chances of survival are very slim. What am I saying in one sentence? I'm saying it is important that we also prioritize other issues, other problems that we're having on the African continent. And having said that, we don't want to lose a direction And the policies that the pharmaceutical companies have put into place, for example, that when you have a medication, when you have a solution to a disease, it will take you not less than 5 years. These are government policies. These are United Nations policies. These are international policies which will move from testings to trials to the final implementation of the project. Now, how sure are we that within a space of 3 to 4 months that these vaccines that we're being told about, these vaccines that are being pushed to us, are they 100% sure? Are they 100% safe? Are there no side effects? Have enough tests been done? Come on, guys. Have we done enough tests? We know right now, even if you say you have medication or you have prescription for any other disease, it must go through various methods of screening to make sure that this drug is safe for the people who are going to be consuming it. I doubt that within the short space of time that we are talking about, 3 to 4 months to be more precise, that this vaccination that we are all excited about has received enough trials, enough balance and checks into place to make sure that the people can consume it. And while we are on that, we also hear from the grapevine that the pharmaceutical companies have put a disclaimer clause that if anyone dies or if anyone has complications or if there are any other problems from this vaccine that we're supposed to be receiving, that the pharmaceutical companies don't want to be held accountable. There is a fine print to this entire coronavirus vaccine that we are receiving. And I'm not saying so to be an alarmist. I'm not saying this so that you can look at me as a conspiracy theorist. But I'm saying look at these things and let us question them so that the policies and principles that we have put on the ground to protect the greater population. We know our sisters were burned by mercury during the days of Ambi and etc. Because some of these facial creams had other things that were in them that caused serious problems. And these pharmaceutical companies and beauty companies never took accountability for that. People were fed, people were infected with mercury into their system. And no one came to accountability in terms of taking responsibility of these issues that actually have remained as diseases for the greater African people. I'm only calling for peace. Yes, I know it's important to preserve life like now, and whatever solution that we have, let's implement it. But while we're implementing these solutions, the question is, what are the short-term problems, what are the medium-term problems, and what are the long-term problems as we are dealing with this pandemic? My heart goes out to all the relatives, to all the friends out there who have been laid to rest due to the pandemic that we are facing. But our hunger for figs can never make us to eat the leaves. We needed a thorough research. African industries, African doctors, African hospitals, African scientists. It is important that we go closer to some of these vaccines. Let us also open up these vaccines. Let us test them. Let us look at them. Let us establish to find out if these drugs that we are being given are really good, both in the short term and in the long term. Yes, they could work to alleviate the problem as a pandemic. But what do we know at the end of the day if some of these solutions will actually not create bigger problems? We don't have enough time and enough scientific information to be able to start looking at the quality of the vaccines that we are receiving. Are these the same types of vaccines that were able to be digested by the body? And some people are saying out there, these are all over the media. And power of media is that we also must be free to talk and share some of these things that we are not clear about. We also hear that there is some RNA, some sort of DNA decoding or DNA alterations that are in these vaccines. These are the type of conversations we want to hear our governments and our medical doctors addressing these things. For these fears are real. Some people are afraid that inside these vaccines, they're going to be putting tracking devices, they're going to be putting magnetic things, they're going to be putting some DNA altering substances. In some cases, they're saying there are going to be all sorts of human tracking in these things. I'm not the one saying it. This is the information that is out there. And the greater population at the bottom here is scared of this vaccine for the simple reason that we don't know what is in the vaccine. We don't know the effects of this vaccine in the short term, in the long term. We don't know the safety of these vaccines. We want answers. We want answers as common Africans. We want answers. And the last question, is this the best way in which we as Africans can begin to deal with the corona or the COVID-19 pandemic? I don't have answers. I'm just throwing these questions at you so that you can also take them further with the various responsible people. Don't go away. We'll be back right after the break as we look at some of the issues and some of the problems that have been on our doors during this time of the coronavirus.
Make massive moves.
Isn't that your daughter's bib?
But the truth is, I feel like Arabella's always with me.
Don't you ever forget this man's face. He killed your brother.
Don't shoot! Please don't shoot! Don't shoot!
Make massive moves with Starside.
I want you to eat healthy food because it's delicious.
Make massive moves.
Would you like another one?
I love it.
I love this too. This is amazing. The grits are so creamy. Oh,
I take pride in my grits.
so flavorful.
I think that looks wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so incredible.
Make massive moves with Starside. Make massive moves.
Bible is human and divine.
It's important for us to remember.
And I'm part of God's story.
Yeah, mama, mama, hey.
God is healing you.
God says what he means, and he means what he says.
God is good.
I am very grateful to God. I am healed.
Amen.
Make massive moves with Starside. Make massive moves.
Deceiver!
There isn't any time to waste then.
We can't save everyone in this war.
One moment, that's all we got.
You're locked in here with me.
Make massive moves with Starside. Make massive moves.
The space race has already started.
Russia had got the first object in space.
The coast is as wild today as it was when Europeans settled the continent.
Enormous beasts with enormous thirst. The teens are primed and ready.
They got the first animal in space, and they got the first person.
Time to see what the boys can do.
Make massive moves with Starside. Make massive moves.
How can you say that?
That is what it is.
Your mother eloped with someone else.
I just think this is such a genius idea. I think it's amazing.
I can be happy.
It's inside you. It's inside of all of us.
It's about cooking smart that are nutritious and delicious.
President Trump acknowledging the coronavirus death toll could be significantly higher.
We don't want to do this.
There is nothing you can take.
Surviving roommates scared. The heavyweights arrive.
Inside finds Petulia, blocked by Jane.
This is the will of God.
Make massive moves with Starsat.
Welcome back again, and we are watching, and some of you have already started sending us some text there. Yes, natural diseases need natural remedies, and scientific diseases will need scientific remedies. And we would not exhaust the corona and the COVID-19 conversation. It's an ongoing conversation, and social media is not making it easy. And many people out there are opting for what I might want to call public opinion. They are actually opting for political correctness. But the same system that we're supposed to be using, which is scientific, which is truthful, which is honest and transparent. And I think there is not amount of good transparency. And some of you guys who are doctors also, you need to help me. I saw some few posters out on media there where some of the vaccines that are coming towards Africa are actually written on them not to be used in Europe, not to be used in America, or only for Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. And is corona different in America vis-a-vis the corona that is in Africa? Why would certain medication be earmarked specifically for a certain audience? And I think these are the kind of suspicions that make the African person to be very agitated and slightly not settled. Because if you have a headache in America, an aspirin is not earmarked for China, and it's not earmarked for Zimbabwe, and it's not earmarked for Los Angeles. An aspirin is an aspirin across the board. And when you begin to have these packages and medications specifically earmarked for certain parts of the region, you're making us suspicious altogether, as we are not very clear as to why in particular are we having a certain vaccine only targeted for a certain part of the world and not useful for the other parts of the world. So if you have any comments in line with our conversation on the COVID-19, please let us know. And please also, while we are there, tell us, some of you at home there, what methods are you using to protect yourself from this great pandemic that is on us. I know masks have come in handy to many people. Sanitization, we equally encourage people to equally sanitize. But over and above that, from our own desk here on Sankofa, we want to say to the people out there, please, futani, take warm water, guava leaves and gum tree leaves or eucalyptus oils, whatever you have, put it in a dish, take the whole family, put yourself under that blanket 20-30 minutes. If you can even do it twice or 3 times a day, it is fine. These are some of the indigenous methods that we've been using. Drinking warm water here and there, washing your hands again, avoiding body contact and all these things that we have been told about. But over and above that, be safe at all times. Sanitize not only your hands, but even your rooms where you are staying in. And some people had a problem with me last time when I said some of these, air fresheners that we can be using. Sage, for example, can also be used, or pepper in some certain cases where people can burn it in their rooms or in their houses, and it can reduce the viral load that is in the air. No, when it started, and I had whispered that this thing could also be airborne. People thought that maybe I'd smoked some weed, and they wanted to become scientific with me. Some people even came to my social network challenging me, what do you know about medicine? Shut up, stay with preaching only, leave this thing to medical doctors. Boom, a few weeks later, people begin to hear that, no, this thing could also be airborne. No, where are you now? Just take all precautionary measures as much as you can. So yes, futani madodakit, steam, that is steaming, drinking warm waters, lemons, gingers and garlics, etc. Because I think when your immune system is much stronger, you should be able to be in a better position to be dealing with this greater pandemic of COVID-19 as we have it on the table. And by the way, Galaxy Universal Network does not own these opinions. I put a disclaimer clause. These are my own personal opinions as a citizen of Africa. This is what I also think in the space of freedom of speech. This is not governed by Galaxy Universal Network, the station from which I'm broadcasting from. These are my own personal views as to how can we begin to protect ourselves daily from this pandemic that is on our shoulders. Let's move over to another very interesting subject that has been keeping me awake for the past few weeks in my own house, and that is a certain country not far from here that is stuck. It was eating some, in my tribe we say, when you eat cold potatoes or when you eat cold sweet potatoes, they get stuck on your throat and you can't breathe. And this country I'm talking about is none other than the United States of America. United States of America has been interesting. While we are struggling with COVID-19 here, they were busy doing elections. We know the outcomes of the elections as it all appeared on our social media space and mainline and mainstream TV stations that Biden is the new president of America and Donald Trump lost the elections. Now, my personal reflections on these events as they were panning out. The first and foremost is actually to hear Donald Trump saying that the elections were rigged. Right. The elections were rigged. In other words, someone stole the elections. Now, here is America, the mother of democracy, saying there's a problem with elections, in that elections are rigged. I've heard this story being whispered from Ghana to Kenya to Zimbabwe to South Africa and many other African countries where African countries are on sanctions. They are on sanctions because the elections were rigged. Elections were rigged. So if American elections were rigged, I want to make an appeal to the African governments. What stops the African governments from putting America on sanctions for rigging elections? If these elections were not fair, if these elections were not truthful, if these elections were rigged, as Donald Trump is saying, therefore it means that this whole monster we call democracy has a problem, has a big problem. What is the problem? Because elections can be bought, elections can be rigged, and from the President of America himself, the ex-President of America, let me qualify, the ex-President of America, from his own lips, saying that these elections were rigged. I think it puts a big problem on the American democratic system as they are enforcing it across the world, including African countries that are also stuck with this demon crazy, which we call democracy. So firstly, it is that elections are rigged. Number two, it is when Donald Trump refuses to leave office and does not want Biden to come into the office. So we understand that power is toxic. Power is toxic. Donald Trump is the epitome that even in a democratic state, when you are constipated with power, you find it difficult to walk away from power. I have seen many of our religious leaders, evangelists and prophets, such as Paula White, of course, with her controversial statement where she was praying for all the angels that are in Africa to support Donald Trump and stuff like that. And they were making prophetic announcements that Donald Trump would win with the policies that were coming into place, that Donald Trump is pro-Christianity and Biden is pro-liberalism and the death of Christianity under the new government. We read all these things as we are grown up also, and literature is out there to be educating us and informing us on these things. But point number two, power is toxic. And Donald Trump has actually portrayed beyond reasonable doubt that power is toxic. As one of our famous statements says, small power corrupts small, but big power corrupts big. Yes, small power corrupts small, but big power also corrupts in a big way. Absolute power absolutely corrupts. And what we find that the American democratic system is facing its hardest war ever. The war of America right now is not, and the threat is not from China. The threat is not from Iraq or Iran. The threat is not from Syria. The threat is not from ISIS. The real threat of America is from within. And it is actually embedded in the sense that Donald Trump is challenging the democratic system of America and refusing to give up power in the United States of America under the pretext that he does not believe that the elections were fair. The elections were honest, that he actually stood to win the elections, and that something happened in those elections which actually throws out the whole democratic system through the window. For it shows that human systems are not altogether sufficient to be running themselves. And in as much as the African presidents are all being compelled, as it were, to have their governments legitimized because they are following a democratic system, we are learning also from America that these democratic systems also have loopholes. They also have loopholes that are within them, and within these loopholes, shenanigans, thugs, state capturers, and power-hungry politicians can actually hold on to power and refuse to step away from power. For power is sweet, and those that have tasted it can show us different sort of demonstrations. So yes, that is my comment on the American elections as we have them. If you have a comment that you want to share with us on the American political system, please feel free to do that. But while we are on that, I want to make an appeal again to the African governments. I want to make an appeal to the United Nations. Yes, I want to make an appeal to the United Nations. You are always very quick to write statements to Mnangagwa, write statements to Mugabe, write statements to African presidents, Kabila and etc., challenging them and threatening them when their elections are not fair and done properly. And here we are. America is stuck with democracy, and the United Nations is totally quiet. I have not heard you release a statement as the United Nations condemning Africa Union, condemning SADC, condemning, and all of you, wherever you are in COMESA and etc., you are politicians. You say you're democratic politicians. Here is one of your big boys, your big bulldog in the democratic space, who is claiming power and holding on to power under the guise of democracy. Where is the voice of Africa Union? Where is the voice of United Nations? Where is the voice of the Commonwealth? Where is the voice of the SADC regions? Because all of you people, when an African seems not to follow and toe the line of your democratic system, you are quick to put sanctions. Zimbabwe right now is struggling with sanctions. Why? Because their elections are not fair and etc. So what are you going to do about America this time? I want to hear your comments on that. As Africans, we are free to talk and we are free to share. We must not be afraid of airing out our views. When we notice that them that call themselves the champions of democracy are now struggling with their demon crazy, this democracy, what are we going to do about it? I think if I was running Africa Union, I would put America on sanctions until they've resolved their election issues. For these issues of election, and by the way, the other day I saw an official comment on the Zimbabwean magazine there, where America has put aside $10 million US, $10 million US to supervise the democratic system of Zimbabwe. Now, here you are as America, you want to supervise Zimbabwe and see how they are going to run their elections. But how do you supervise our elections when you are struggling with your own elections? I have known it for the longest of time. Every time an African country is having elections, we want external observers. We want foreign observers from the United States, from the European Union, from everywhere else, from coming of the United Nations, coming to supervise African elections. That time is over. If you don't allow Africans also to come to your country and supervise your elections, who the hell do you think you are? That you mind coming around Africa here and supervise our elections? We were not there when your elections, Donald Trump, were rigged. So stay away from African politics, because you are not even able to deal with your own European and American politics by yourselves. This is candid information. We need to be clear on these things, that what you do on the right must also do to the left. And what you are doing for others, you must also allow them to do the same for you. So next time you want to come and supervise African elections, we want to tell you on your face, start also inviting us to come and supervise your elections. And please, Donald Trump, leave the office and leave it peacefully. Leave it peacefully. Go home back to Texas. Have yourself a holiday. Relax and enjoy your old age. Your time in power has expired. Allow other people to come into spaces of power and drive the country towards the direction in which the nation has decided that the nation must go. You are not America by yourself as Donald Trump, and you think that you are the only one in the whole world and in the whole country of America who is capable of driving American politics. That is very wrong. You should be able, you should be willing to share power with others. And were you a bit humble, were you a bit kind, were you a bit polite in your language, maybe I would have felt sorry for you. But I remember the other day you were calling Africans, you were calling us shitholes, you were calling us all sort of derogative names, a whole president of a country. And I heard, by the way, yesterday that your account on the Twitter has been suspended by Twitter for inciting violence. And while I'm concluding on this, what do you say when Africans go on the street and they toy, they are barbaric? Ha! Chickens have come home to roost. There we were last week. Yeah, last week. Donald Trump incited people to go on the streets, and they actually broke the doors, moved into government institutions, moved into parliaments and etc., moved into statutory equipment, and they vandalized those equipments, took videos inside the chambers of power. Now, when you saw that happening in Nigeria, you thought Nigerians were crazy. When you saw that happening in Uganda, when people were knocking each other with microphones, you thought that they were crazy. When you saw them fighting in South African parliaments, you thought that that was crazy. That is so barbaric. That is so uneducated. Africans are this and this. Yeah, now talk. I want to hear your comment. Now, when your fellow Americans, both black and white, who are in support of you, literally become hooligans inside those parliaments, what do you say now? We want to be very clear. Human beings are the same all over the world. And when injustice is rife, people will stand against it. People will stand up against it. So if those who support Trump think that Trump deserves power, they have a right to protest. And those who believe that Biden won the elections, they also want to protest. They have a right to do so. But if we manage these rights and we don't manage them properly, this could actually end up in resulting in conflict, resulting in civil wars, as you actually have the whole country broken into two between the Democrats and Republicans. But for the greater part of this American story, I want to put my 3 dots there. Please share with me your comments on the elections of America, on Donald Trump refusing to leave office. Share with me your comments on democracy in America. Share with me your commentary on Americans and Europeans supervising African elections and the African people not being invited to supervise the international elections in some of these European countries. I want to know your thoughts on that. What do you think? Have you ever had your president or your governments being invited to go and be observers in Europe or in American elections? We'll be back right out of the break.
Make massive moves.
Isn't that your daughter's bib?
But the truth is, I feel like Arabella's always with me.
Don't you ever forget this man's face. He killed your brother.
Don't shoot! Please don't shoot! Don't shoot!
Make massive moves with Starside.
I want you to eat healthy food because it's delicious.
Make massive moves.
Would you like another one?
I love it.
I love this soup. This is amazing. The grits are so creamy. Oh.
I take pride in my grits. No,
So flavorful.
I think that looks wonderful.
Yeah.
It's so incredible.
Make massive moves with Starside.
We will not finish up this show. Welcome back again one more time. We'll not finish up this show before we pick up another element or another issue that has caused quite a bit of a riffraff on my social media space. I saw a small little clip somewhere, which I thought I would share with the greater audience out there. And the clip was very interesting. It was saying, if it is a clip that was highlighting that the Bible has copyrights. Yeah, the Bible has copyrights. In other words, the King James Version is copyrighted, New International Version, and New English Bible, Good News, they're all copyrighted. And this guy actually just threw a comment that got me thinking. He says, if this is the word of God, then why must certain individuals have copyrights to that word? When you look at it from a glimpse, you said, obvious, but look at it again. If the Bible is the word of God, then why must one company, Collins, for example, or Harper, for example, have copyrights to the word of God? Then say, no, it's because they translated it and they must be compensated for their work. Here's a simple comment. I write my book, for example, So You Want to Be the Master, one of the books that I've written. Now you take, because the concept of copyrights has to do with intellectual property. Now, the intellectual property is actually the thought that is inside the literature itself. Translations cannot have intellectual property. They must have translation rights, not intellectual rights. I hope I'm trying, this is making, in my own head it makes sense. I don't know if it is making sense to you. Therefore, if you take my book that I wrote, which contains my thoughts, and then you translate my book into your language, can you claim intellectual property, or you are only supposed to claim copyrights, copyrights, or photocopying rights, or translation rights? But in the midst of you doing all this, then the original intellectual property must be paid to the one who generated that content. Now, having said that, the question therefore is, who generated the content of the Bible? Who is the original owner of the intellectual property of this book we call the Bible? I understand those that are translating it and moving it into their own languages, they want to say we have intellectual property. But no. It's not intellectual property, because this is not your word. It is as good as me right now picking up a Daily Sun newspaper and then I translate it into my own language. Then I start selling the Daily Sun newspaper and I say, no, you'll be sued and arrested. But is it not true that this Bible we're talking about, there are other people at the back there who are milking and making money out of some intellectual property that does not belong to them? Who are the original writers of this Bible? Who owns the intellectual property of the Bible? If it is the word of God, why is it that some certain people have exclusive rights to it? And is it wrong that we also, and anyone else on the face of the earth, can take the same book and rewrite it according to their own interpretation? Because the King James Version interpreted the Bible to his own European theology. So did the New English Bible. So did the New International Version. So what is wrong when Africans can also pick up the same text and translate it according to their own historical background? We find that many of the verses that are inside this text, slaves, obey your masters, what, and all these things, which passages actually seek to oppress the black people. If I'm supposed to translate that verse for myself as an African, I will not look at that verse and call my fellow Africans slaves. I will call the strangers and the visitors in our land, they become the slaves. Therefore, it will read, instead of slaves, obey your masters, it will read, all foreigners into the African continent, please obey the masters and the kings of the lands where you find yourselves. For that is my context as an African person who is applying myself to the text. So you want to also do, this caused quite a bit of a riff-raff and people were losing their heads over that comment when I actually suggested that, is it possible that all of us on the face of the earth, if this is the word of God and it is subject to interpretation, subject to translation, if the Africans should also start translating the same word, I wonder how that word will be looking like. And while we're on that, I will not forget, of course, to make a nice little conclusion for you for today, as I'm reminding you of the gospel according to Maponga J, which I'm writing for myself. I'm writing my own gospel. My own gospel. Why are you writing your own gospel? Yes, because I can. Why are you writing your own gospel? Because there's lots of traditional information. There's lots of oral tradition from my grandfathers, from my forefathers, from my DNA, from observation, from walking around the world, from interacting with other people. And all this information has not been put anywhere on a piece of paper. Those that are coming from formal colonial education, they lambast and insult African knowledge systems because our information is not written, our information is not documented, our information has not been put on paper. So I thought before I die, this is something that I'm going to do. I'm going to collect all indigenous knowledge systems that I come in contact with, that I am reminded of, that I have been taught, that I understand, and I'll put it on writing and I'll put it on paper so that children that come after me will be able to read. And if you think this is only for me, no, this is actually for my children. I want to leave this information in the hands of my children. By the time I'm almost halfway done or three-quarter way done, I'll ask my children, here is my work. Please copy this with your own handwriting and write your own text. And then also tell your children to write their own text. It has taken us 400 years to be this colonized. Colonized in our education, colonized in our politics, colonized in our economics, colonized in our religion, colonized in our culture, colonized in our fashion, colonized in our technology. 400 years later, the system has been working seamlessly and effectively so. It will take us the same amount of time as Africans to go back again and retrace our steps and re-educate ourselves, reorient ourselves. The time of the awakening is now. And there's a beautiful story that I once read somewhere in the Black Book where Mary and Joseph walked for 3 days from Jerusalem going back to their home. And when they had traveled for 3 days, they thought that he was in their midst. They thought that he was in their midst. Then they were eating. Then they were sleeping. Then they were talking under the assumption that he was in their midst. This was their son, Yeshua. And then on the third day, they stopped to say, can we please look for this young man? They went to the other homes. He was not there. They went where other kids were playing. He was not there. Imagine the embarrassing act. 2 grown-up adults lost a child. They had to stop, turn back, and walk back to Jerusalem, where they walked for 3 days. They had to walk again for 3 days, going back to look for that which was important to them. This, for me, is a beautiful story, a story of our Keblam, a story of Africa. Is it possible that for the past 300 years, we have been moving in one direction? And that which is most important to us, Ubuntu, that which is most important to us, our identity, that which is most important to us, our culture, that which is most important to us, our land, that which is most important to us, our spirituality. Is it possible that after all these 300 years of walking with Europeans into the global village they are promising us, that we have left something behind? It will take the African continent that confidence. By the way, you have an option. You can say, we have lost him, we've lost him. As many of my African people and African friends feel, we've gone too far. It is too late to turn back. Let us just continue and proceed. But if you know that your child is not here, where are you going? What's the rush? If what is important has been left behind, common sense must tell you, let them go. Let them go where they are going. You turn back as Africa. You turn back as Al-Keblam. You turn back as Kush. Turn back as Ethiopia. Turn back as Ham. And walk back to look for that which you have left behind. It will take you the same amount of time to retrace your steps spiritually, retrace your steps pharmacologically, retrace your steps academically, retrace your steps politically, retrace your steps historically, retrace your steps as Africa. Go back to the place where you started. Find this, what is important to you. Find yourselves, find your culture, find your spirituality, and you can proceed with the journey. But this time around, you are not going on the journey alone. You are going with that which is important to you. I want to make an appeal to the greater African leadership. I want to make an appeal to the African religious leaders. I want to make an appeal to the African political leaders that you cannot be rushing us to run into a paradise which the Europeans have created. You cannot be pushing us to run into an utopia of globalization, which the Europeans are going to be kings and chiefs in that global village. And you as Africans are going to be continuously slaves in that global village. And some people say, hey, Maponga, stop talking like that. You are going to go to hell. Hey, we are in hell already. We are in hell already. We don't have to be afraid of another hell that is coming. What is important is that we need to do the Sankofa thing. Let's look back and we can see forward. Let's look back where we are coming from and we can see where we are going. It is a backward glance with a forward look. And when we can look back and see where we lost it, see what we have forgotten behind, see what we have undermined, and for long we have traveled and we have lost it. How do we regain our dignity? How do we regain our respect? How do we regain our health as Africans? I know we're told that eating traditional foods is uncivilized. Eating takeaways is healthy. And we've pumped our bodies with oils, we've pumped our bodies with salts, we've pumped our bodies with sugar and etc. The side effects of these will end with all of us in hospitals and in clinics and in pharmacies, buying tablets to be drinking every time. Can we not look back at where we are coming from? For the software that we have in our minds must control our hardware. The way in which we think as Africans must control also the way in which we behave. And I will not close this show without telling you about Soup Africa, or is it Soup Africa? A young man from the north, from Senegal, he has actually come up with Sub-Africa. Put the link at the bottom there. Sub-Africa. We now have our own platform also, which is twice faster than WhatsApp. Sub-Africa. It is owned by the African. And as I'm talking to you right now, on all my Facebook accounts, I have been banned again. I don't know for how long. Our WhatsApps are now being managed and etc. This is an African product, Sub-Africa, which we are all going to support. Please, there's a link at the bottom there. Join the link. Let us begin to move our content away from Facebook, away from WhatsApp and etc., and away from these Instagrams. Let us as Africans begin to develop our own African platforms. Not only develop platforms, but even have servers also. Servers that are behind there, where we can store our own information for our own good. I heard the other day that WhatsApp, for example, is coming up and Facebook together, they're coming up with a software now where your accounts are going to be monitored, your contacts are going to be monitored, your geographical location is going to be monitored, and all this information is moving over into the greater intelligence. And when we say we are scared of what this technology is happening and is doing to us, we are not just raising alarms. We're actually raising a very important information, because these phones that we have in our hands are actually sellouts. For this phone can tell the people who have access to them where you are, what you are doing, who you are talking to, what you are eating, how much you have spent, who you have spoken to, and what's your relationship, and etc. and etc. So we want to challenge the African business people. In conclusion, please, let us take our monies, Dangotes, Patrice Mutsepes, and etc. Let's not just buy cars and buy houses. Let us also buy satellite dishes. Let us also buy servers, African servers, where you can begin to store our information so that Africa can communicate with Africa without being supervised by the CIA, by the KGBs, by the M15s, and the other SS services, secret services societies, and the Freemasons who have an interest in terms of global politics, global economics, and global movement. So we want to support Subfrica, I've just opened up my account yesterday. I'm still trying to find my way around the application, but I already have my Farmers of Thought group on Subfrica. Why am I supporting Subfrica? Because it's an African product. It belongs to us. It belongs to one of us. And the best thing we can do is to buy black. Best thing we can do is to think black. It is to eat black. It is to drink black. It is to dress black. And also it is to drive black. We want to challenge the industrialists also. Let's make our own motor cars here in Africa. And I was speaking to a friend of mine here. We have a few bikers in the country here, and some 2 or 3 friends are already able right now to customize those bikes. We just don't want to customize them. We want also to start coming up with our own brands of our own bikes, our own cell phones, our own cars, our own clothes. And it was embarrassing the other day to see actually a broomstick made in China. Hey, madoda kit, kunzima. Africa, with all this power that we have to date, we still cannot make a broomstick, a toothpick. You must rely on China to be sending us toothpicks and broomsticks, mops for mopping the floor, made in China. These are all business opportunities that we have here locally on our own ground. Let us look back at owning our means of production, our own industries, our own pharmaceuticals, our own food, our own clothes. We need to own what we eat, and we need to eat what we own. We need to own the value chain of production as Africans. This is how we're going to create jobs for ourselves. And right now, as we are looking at this corona pandemic, with the problems that it is giving us, let us also start looking at solutions. How are we going to survive in these solutions? I want to conclude by saying, dig out the lawn in the back of your house, plant some vegetables. Dig out some grass, plant some vegetables. Dig out some grass, plant some vegetables. If you have some 15, 20,000 bucks, please don't spend it recklessly. Go back to the village, buy yourself a village, buy a few goats, buy a few chickens, buy a few sheep, buy a few cattle, build yourself a small little home there, put a small little solar panel there, go on weekends, collect your food, and come back to town and enjoy yourself. But we need, as Africans, to start learning how to unplug from the matrix, how to unplug from the matrix constantly and slowly and surely. For the future that we are looking at is not as bright as we think it is. It is high time that as Africans, we begin to look for African solutions. Here on your program, Sankofa, with your host, Maponga J, discussing greater part of African conversations, issues from the north to the south, wherever you are on the face of Africa. We want to say we love you and we care for you. Harambe, Jambo, Sankofa from your host, Maponga J, Chigaramboko, Gramashamba, Huda, Chirana, Wanji, Vuzijena, Mukanya, Remit, Sosi, Wanachigarama, Matanda, Novora, Chiwekiteza, chinotedzera vari kure vari pedu vanotamba nacho vana matanga kugara mutambo uri paruware vacherwe mangurana vapfuri vayo. Until we see again on Pembera Namapinichira Machena, say to all of you, don't do what I wouldn't do. If you decide to do it better.